because for most of us, we've been in this country.
Welcome to the Solidarity Humanitarian tent. I am joined here by 4 exciting panelists. I'm going to do a very brief introduction, and then they're going to do slightly longer introductions of themselves. So here we have Mohamed Abu Jafar, who lives in Jenin in the occupied West Bank, and he is here with us to speak about the Parents Circle, which he joined in 2016, and it now serves as the facilitator and manager for the organization's youth summer camp. Gili Getz is an Israeli-American photojournalist, actor, and peace activist. He is here to speak with us today about Combatants for Peace, which he is the president of the American Friends of Combatants for Peace, and also serves as vice president for Partners for Progressive Israel, and recently co-founded Israelis for Peace. Lots of exciting organizations. Tzili is joining us to speak about Women Wage Peace, the largest grassroots peace movement in Israel. And Reverend Ann Derse was a career diplomat who served for over 30 years with the US State Department and is here today to speak with us about Project Rozana. So we're just going to go down the line. If you can each take a few minutes to say a little bit more about yourself and how you came to your organization and what your organization does.
Okay. I just came in. I'm here in DC because I'm studying global health at Georgetown University. I left Jenin in August this year. We are, as a Parents Circle, I will talk less about myself and more about the Parents Circle because it's part of my story, why I joined the Parents Circle, because it's for bereaved families, and I lost my brother in 2002. He was shot by an Israeli tank while he was in the school. So everyone in the Parents Circle, if remember, lost one of his relatives. So this is why we are one of the fewest in the world organization that we always say we don't want you here. We don't want more loss. We don't want to expand. We don't want new members. So this is one of the things that we do. Before coming to DC, I was living in Jenin, and I'm still living. My house is still there. And DC, Jenin, in the last 3 years, it was a place you can't, as a human being, continue living there because you don't have your basic human needs to stay or to live or to raise a child in this city because there is a demolition of houses, streets, and infrastructure. So it was very hard to live and very hard to talk about peace and very hard also to do summer camps. So I came here after the summer camp, and this year camp that every year we have an annual summer camp for kids aged 14 to 18, 25 Palestinian kid, 25 Israeli kid. And for the first time ever, we did the summer camp in Cyprus. And this means that we should arrange a travel arrangement for 25 Palestinian kids from West Bank to Jordan, then from Jordan to Cyprus, and it was very dangerous because we have checkpoints in the West Bank. We spent a night in Jericho in case there's a closure. And on the Israeli side, we should also arrange arrangement for the kids also to travel because it's from security reasons for both sides. We have a lot of arrangements and For the first time, we have lawyers to work, we have courts to go, because we are taking kids abroad. So it took us a lot of time to work it out. And for the first time that we as a parent circle, me as a summer camp manager, I was afraid to put the kids together for the first time because of what's happening now, because of the killing now happening, and because of the intensive 11 months. So we've been through times last year that in the Knesset they want to blow the summer camp. This is one of the Knesset members says, we want to blow the summer camp up. They don't want terrorists to come to meet Israeli kids. And we gone to court and we take the license to do the summer camp last year in Israel, 2 days before the summer camp. And I was the summer camp manager and I should finalize everything. So this year, it's taken to the next step of difficulty to prepare the facilitators, to prepare the kids, and to prepare all the logistics. So this is why I am, despite what's happened, despite my loss, despite what happened and happening now in Jenin. Like yesterday, I was all the night waking up. They entered the Jenin city for 11 hours, and they were like the jeeps, they were in front of my house, and my sister just was sending me videos and the shooting and what they are doing. So despite all of this, what's happened and what's happening in the summer camp is one of the things that keep me going. Because in the first 2 days, during these hard times, traveling as a group, it's also pressure. Traveling, as Israelis, it's also pressure that they travel as a group. It's like there is a lot of fear about the safety, and also for the Palestinian kids, traveling as a group, there's also a big fears because they are traveling as a group, and they are kids aged 14 to 18. And all this pressure on them, and for most of the Palestinians, I think all of the Palestinians, they were first time to be out of the West Bank, to travel, to have even a travel document. So all this pressure on the kids, and what's happening now and the violence, and we are bringing them to sit together. And it's like putting water on oil. So in the first 2 days, this was intensive. It was a lot of cries. It was a lot of anger. Then in the third day, after we did the breakthrough, we did a dialogue meeting. We bring 2 speakers from the parent circle, spoke about their loss and how they are now working in peace and reconciliation. And after we process this in meetings, uninational meetings, and in groups, in the third day, we started to notice how it's now, they are more intimate, they are now making friends, they are making groups of interests, they are now playing with each other, they are now talking about hard stuff. Because if I want to talk about hard stuff for people that I don't know, it will be, difficult for them to understand me. But when you see the humanity on the other side and elevate the fear about the other side, and this was the breakthrough that we made. And I don't want to take a lot of time. I don't know if 6 minutes, okay. So I will finish with this. In the 9th day, we always did 7 days. This time we did 9 days because there's a traveling. In the 9th day, I forced the kids to go to the buses. They don't want to leave. And so this was one of the things that I take home with hope. Even though I came back home, there was airstrike in front of my house when I came from the airplane. So, and I got it in the news. Even though when hard times comes, when I feel depressed, this unique incidents, this is unique things that I witnessed that keep me going. Sorry for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to thank the synagogue, Temple Shalom, no better place to do this, and for the space that is rehumanizing Israelis and Palestinians. We find there's very few of those, and by the turnout we were just talking, we're very excited about the thirst for a place that fully humanizes both Palestinians and Israelis. My name is Gili Getz. I'm an Israeli. I grew up in Israel. After my military service, I moved here to America. It's been a long time anti-occupation and peace activist. Met the Rabbi and some of those actions and protests. And I just want to say how difficult this moment is for both Palestinians and Israelis. And you know, after October 7, a lot of Israelis, you know, said, how can this happen? How can this be? And now Israelis are also asking, how can it be that our government is basically destroying the states and our freedom is now being robbed from us in our own state? My parents came from the Soviet Union, and there's a profound, profound shock to what's happening to Israel. For those of us working with Palestinians and against the occupation and experience places like Sheikh Jarrah, Silwan, Masafariata in the South Hebron Hills, Huara, and all these, I think we're better prepared for this moment because we saw that these forces of supremacy in the West Bank and those same political forces, those same set of characters are now turning and robbing Jews of their freedom. And it feels more familiar to me because of I know what Palestinians go through than to my family, who's to them it's a complete shock that such a thing can occur. About Combatants for Peace. So we are a joint binational movement. We organize from the river to the sea. We have two of everything. We have two executive directors, two offices, two coordinators, two project managers. We have two of everything, trying to create a sense of working together as equals despite mass and enormous imbalance of power and asymmetry in this conflict, something we go back to, something that exists in every space, including this space that we inhabit. We put together the largest peace event in the land in partnerships with the incredible work of the Family Forum, the Parent Circle Family Forum. We also, 15,000 people in 2023 came to Park Yarkon, and it was literally a sea of people that came to mourn on Yom HaAtzmaut, the most sacred day to Israeli Jewish society, where it mourns as dead from wars and terror attacks, but mourning together, mourn the lives of Israelis and Palestinians, which is a very radical act and ask from both societies to do. The movement also started hosting a joint Nakba Day ceremony, Remembrance Day. Nakba is when Palestinian society marks and mourns its strategies. So we also host joint Nakba Day. And we had Representative Rashida Tlaib came and speak at the last one. This year, after October 7, we couldn't do it for security purposes. We couldn't do it in real time, so we pre-recorded both ceremonies. But I'll say that what grounds us as a movement is our commitment to joint struggle, to nonviolence. We are actively working with communities in Area C who face expulsion threats, ethnic cleansing, settler violence. All that has been increased dramatically since October 7, And we are trying to help together Palestinians and Israelis with protest, with assistance to these communities, helping them get access to water, mainly in Area C of the South Hebron Hills, in the Jordan valleys. These are Palestinians facing. They're the front lines of the violent ongoing annexation of the West Bank that's ongoing on steroids. Because of the war in Gaza, it gets less play. How more time? One more minute. I also want to talk about our freedom schools. So we have education for young Palestinians from all over the West Bank and Gaza who go through a program about nonviolence, about history, about the movement, kind of the DNA of the movement. The movement started when ex-combatants, both Israelis and Palestinians, on their own, reached a conclusion that violence is not the way to keep us safe, and violence is not the way to bring peace. And they heard about each other, and they took a leap of faith and met, not knowing if they're going to make through this meeting, not knowing if they can even trust. And over a year of secret talks, build enough trust to start a movement. And now, like some of our members say, we work with one heart. We don't view ourselves as two sides. We view ourselves on the exact same side, and cultivate and model what joint struggle looks like, despite the great asymmetry of power and despite the enormous amount of privilege that Jews have from the river to the sea. But both recognizing that these systems of oppression and supremacy, whether they come from Jewish supremacy or Muslim supremacy, are going to destroy us all. And we got to build an alternative, and we got to build a path where we can fight together and build a community, which I'm very happy to belong to, that is binational, that has the room for Israelis and Palestinians to be fully themselves and believe in equality, and build and model this equality, which is extremely challenging, especially now.
Thank you, everyone, for being here and for the opportunity to speak to you about women, wage, peace. Am I too close? So how many women do you think are in the war cabinet in Israel or on the Hamas negotiating team? I think it's safe to assume on both sides it is zero. Women Wage Peace was founded in 2014 when then Protective Edge operation, when Israel went to Gaza, and it seemed like it was an unprecedented level of violence, death, and destruction there. It looks minuscule now. But when that happened, women who were living in Israel decided that they needed to come together within a tradition of women's activism for peace, right? And particularly in Israel, as you may know, there was Women in Black in the 80s, there were the 4 women around the Lebanon wars, there was the Coalition of Women for Peace in the 2000s. You know, there's sort of a tradition of women's activism for peace in the country. What was different about Women Wage Peace was that they wanted to widen the tent, to really widen the umbrella so that women of all ideological backgrounds can feel welcome, that this wasn't a political movement, that it was nonpartisan, that it was really about women connecting as mothers, as caretakers, as sisters, as humans who want to raise people to live and not to die. And so they currently characterize themselves as the largest grassroots peace movement in Israel, with a mission for a nonviolent and mutually accepted political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that ensures the active participation of women at all stages of the process. Fast forward a few years ahead, in 2021, big surprise, another round in Gaza, this time Guardian of the Walls. I don't know who comes up with these names, what kind of PR company does those. But that's when Palestinian women, and these are women who are living in Gaza, in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, and elsewhere in diaspora, also decided that they wanted to come together and make sure that women are part of the political process on their side, and formed Women of the Sun. And Women of the Sun and Women Wage Peace have become these sister organizations who are really working in lockstep. And everything that they do is really something that comes out of their joint efforts. Now, Women Wage Peace, as I mentioned, that wider tent, that means that there are women there who might even live in settlements in the West Bank, and there are women who are Palestinian citizens of Israel who live in Haifa and are active within the peace movement. The idea was really that this is a place for women to come together and agree on a common ground. And one of those common grounds is called the Mother's Call. And if you look it up, you'll see that it really is a very basic call for collaboration, for political alternatives, and for the leadership to make sure that women are part of these processes. And actually, recently, the Pope endorsed it. So that was an interesting addition to their long list of endorsers, and you too can become part of that. Speaking of Georgetown, just today, the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security announced an award for both of these organizations, Women Wage Peace and Women of the Sun. It's a peace-building award that they will be getting later this month, which again is part of the growing recognition of this work and the importance of making sure that women's voices are in this sphere and is acknowledged. Because as you all said, they're not there. They're not there, but they're paying the price. They're not there, but they're out in the front lines. They're not there where the decisions are made, but they're there when they're burying their children. And I think that it comes from that really deep human connection, as mentioned here before, one of grief, of pain, of fear, that really brings them along. I wanted to just mention a few things that they're working on. So just a few days before October 7th, both organizations got together and marched together in Jerusalem towards the Dead Sea in what was this incredible show of solidarity. And they tend to wear white clothes with a turquoise scarf. And the reason for the turquoise scarf is the color is supposed to be a mix of the sky and the sea, the Israeli and the Palestinian colors, kind of a way of blending, a way of reflecting back to all of these women that their identities and perspectives matter here. They were marching together with great optimism. The two movements actually got some funding from USAID under a Middle East appropriation bill here in Congress to do some bridge building activities of cross-border peace builders. And then October 7th happened. And it took them a week as a movement to issue a statement because it took that long for them to get over the shock and be able to connect and speak in one voice about how they wanted to move forward. This peace bridge building activity is really interesting in that it brings together women who have not necessarily worked in that space before, but are traditional and religious leaders. So within Israel, that would be women who are Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Druze, and similarly and within Palestine, women of a variety of religions. And really equipping them with some peace building tools. First, by uninationally, so just their group, and then bringing the two groups together. So that's one sort of target group, right? Women of faith. The other group that has been really important is this context to women who work on environmental justice issues. And again, connecting the two, conflict and environmental justice are so interlinked, and resource scarcity and resource equity so intricately linked. And so similarly, the peace-building aspect of women from both sides and then bringing them together. The other thing I just wanted to flag is a really, I think, innovative bill that Women Wage Peace has tabled with the Israeli Knesset in 2018. It's called the Political Alternative Bill. As you can imagine, it hasn't moved forward with the current government, but there is hope that it might. And the idea for this bill is to make sure before any military operation takes place that there is a concerted discussion of political alternatives. And that bill came out of reports after prior rounds in Gaza, where members of Knesset said, we were never privy to a discussion. There was never a discussion of other alternatives. There was an immediate knee-jerk reaction for military action, aggressive, severe, without sort of an ongoing understanding of what political alternatives can and should look like. So the idea of this bill is to actually institute, if you will, kind of like a yellow light, right? Before you go in and do what you normally do, really have some discussion around ongoing, but also in the moment, political alternatives. And I think that would be a really interesting thing if that's passed. And the last thing I'll say before I'll turn it over to the Reverend, a lot of the work that the women are doing is really around countering the psychological barriers to what peace really is and what it means. And as you've heard, October 7th really made them have to, in many ways, energize, update, upgrade their toolkit about what does it mean to be peace builders when there is such a level of enmity and hostility and fear and lack of trust in levels that they really haven't experienced and seen before. And so a lot of that work is really very much grassroots around how people can really wrap their minds about what peace means and what does it mean to be in a truly collaborative, and in this case, women-led initiative. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Like my colleagues, I want to thank all of you for being here for this incredibly important event. And I don't know about you, but I am inspired and humbled when I hear about the work of your organizations and what we heard in the previous symposium. My name is the Reverend Ann Derse. I'm a deacon in the Episcopal Church. I work at St. John's Norwood Episcopal Church right here in Bethesda. And before I became a deacon in 2018, I worked for 30 years in the U.S. State Department. But it was in my capacity as the deacon at St. John's, I handle all the social justice and community engagement work for my church. And it was in that capacity that I met this wonderful organization I'm going to speak to you about today, Project Rozana. But it was in the context of a broader effort that we have undertaken over recent years to really work interfaith and to work for peace. And the Holy Land, as we call Israel Palestine, the Holy Land is sacred to us too. And everyone in the Holy Land, all the peoples of the Holy Land are our siblings. So if there's a role for us in supporting what's going on in these communities to build peace, we want to be as active as possible in it. So that's why I'm delighted that Project Rozana asked me to join their board. I'm not a direct manager of this organization, I'm on the board, and I want to acknowledge Judy Schneider, sitting right here in the front row, who's also a member of the Project Rozana board. I hope you'll be inspired by the work of this organization, as we have been by the work of all of yours. So Project Rozana is an international not-for-profit that promotes access to quality health care through joint initiatives between Israelis and Palestinians, building bridges of understanding and relationships between Israelis and Palestinians through its programs and laying the foundation for peace. I know that sounds familiar because that's what we heard in the first symposium Arava Institute does, and Fieldbait, and many other organizations. Let me tell you the story of how Rozana International was founded in 2013. A little girl who was 4 years old fell off a balcony in her home in Ramallah, and her mother saw she was grievously injured, and that the Palestinian healthcare system was not going to be able to deal with her injuries. So she worked with friends of hers in Israel, Jewish friends of hers, and she was taken to Hadassah Hospital. They were able to get her there in time, and she was saved. And today I think she's a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, thriving and doing really well. And the relationships and collaboration that went into saving that one young girl's life inspired people in Australia, a gentleman named Ram Finkel, among others, to say, why can't we take that concept and scale it and build relationships between Israelis and Palestinians around healthcare, which is a basic human need. And the people who get involved in healthcare are incredibly empathetic people. And there's people who need quality healthcare in Israel-Palestine. So that is how Project Rozana came into being. It's a story that inspired me when I heard about this organization to want to support it. And today it's a multi-ethnic, multi-faith team of about 8 people who work on the ground in Israel and Palestine, and they're supported by national entities in Australia, Canada, Germany, the UK, and the US. I'm involved with Project Rozana US, as is Judy. How does Rozana do this work? Well, it implements a variety of training, treatment, and transportation programs that don't only improve healthcare, but also build relationships and contribute to the possibility of a long-term peaceful solution. It creates connections between Israeli and Palestinian healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, technicians, and hospitals and other institutions, healthcare institutions. And the way they foster understanding and cooperation is through a joint effort, people working together to address a fundamental human need. So the kinds of initiatives that they do are, for example, they bring female Palestinian doctors and nurses to remote villages to treat women and children with expert online support from top hospitals and professionals in Israel. They use minivans with drivers, Jewish drivers bringing Palestinian children to hospitals in Israel to get critical cancer care, for example, and other life-saving treatment. They train Israeli doctors and nurses and Palestinian doctors and nurses together to upgrade their knowledge in key medical areas, but they also conduct peace-building programs together, facilitated dialogue, and they teach Arabic and Hebrew, which these medical health professionals are extremely interested in learning because it fosters their collaboration. All of this work is continuing despite the war. Of course, with the war, there were disruptions in the ability for people to travel and to connect with each other, but Project Rozana has been able to overcome these things. Healthcare is one area where people continue to want to work together very closely despite moments of tension and severe conflict. So across Israel, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem, Project Rozana has succeeded in keeping those relationships going through programs that have brought thousands of Palestinian and Israeli doctors, nurses, and hospital administrators together. They've been able to extend the programs that they're doing and continue them despite the crisis. For example, there's a program, the Women for Women program, which features teams of 8 Palestinian healthcare female doctors in a variety of special fields, who, with remote support from the top Ob-Gyn doctors at Sheba Hospital in Tel Aviv, they bring regular care to women living in these remote villages in the southern sector of the West Bank. That work continues despite the difficulties. One of the Palestinian doctors who was recently selected to be trained at a major Israeli hospital in Jerusalem commented, and these are her words, that keeping Women for Women up and running amidst growing Israeli-Palestinian violence in the West Bank has not been easy. It is time-consuming and sometimes very dangerous for our minivan to reach the villages we serve, with Israeli military roadblocks forcing us off paved roads to drive on rutted dirt paths. Yet it is always worthwhile when we surmount the myriad difficulties and our minivan approaches a village and we see the joy on the face of our patients as they run to meet our van. And although Rozana is not presently able to work directly in Gaza, a very short time ago, in response to the ongoing situation there, Rozana launched a mobile tent clinic initiative in Gaza in partnership with a group called ANERA that provides the actual service on the ground to treat people displaced by the war. And they handle something like 20 hospital days a month. They treat about 600 people through the month. They're helping with the polio vaccination. And they're able to do that in part because of remote support from hospitals in Israel. In addition, we've been able to help raise emergency funds for Palestinian and Israeli institutional partners so they can meet the immediate needs in their respective communities. Now, Project Rozana knows that in the end there needs to be a political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But we know that such a peace process has to be accompanied, as others have said, by the readiness of people on both sides of the conflict to accept that solution. So these kinds of people-to-people initiatives that we've heard about today are what build the trust and the understanding and the empathy, but also, as the young woman from NSL said, the desire to actually work together to accomplish something. As Rozana's CEO Ronit Zimmer recently wrote us from Israel, as health diplomats, Project Rozana is uniquely positioned to surmount political divides, foster meaningful connections that transcend borders, and ensure that the provision of healthcare does not break down during this time of war. We are planting the seeds for a better tomorrow in which Palestinians and Israelis live, and side by side in friendship and peace informed by common humanity. The people of Rozana believe with every fiber of our beings that if we hold this vision in our hearts and work together to achieve it, we can make it happen. So I'm very proud to be working with this organization and supporting it, and I hope you'll consider doing so as well. Thank you so much. Is that okay?
Thank you, all of you, for those wonderful introductions to your work. And each of you touched on this a little bit already in varying detail, but whoever feels so moved to answer in more depth, how has the work changed since October 7th, and what do you hope to see going forward? What would be, the goal for success in the next year? Whoever wants to take it.
Well, I can mention a little bit of how the kinds of specific challenges that were faced by Project Rozana in keeping these partnerships going together at the institutional level, at the regional medical network level, and at the individual level. Again, this is the CEO, Ronit Zimmer, who sent this information, but she said Israeli and Palestinian hospitals were thrust into chaos, obviously, right, with the war. And they grappled with disrupted operations and acute staff shortages. Problems were augmented by increased Israeli military road closures, which made it hard to travel, to get together, and they often prevented Palestinian medical personnel from even getting to their hospitals. In Israel, tens of thousands of healthcare providers were called up for military service, and at many hospitals there were incidents of tension between Jewish and Arab providers, and the dialogue was at risk of breaking down. So what did they do to help address that? They set up a program called Healing the Healers, and they called on one of Project Rozana's signature initiatives, the Binational School of Psychotherapy, which brings Israeli and Palestinian trauma therapists together to learn particularly how to treat children with trauma and PTSD. And they pulled some of those therapists to come and actually talk to the participants, the nurses, the doctors, the medical professionals who were having the struggle. And they helped them rebuild their dialogue and their relationship, and it's been remarkably successful. They also augmented the peace-building aspect that they place in every program. They don't just train people in medical technical issues, they also have peace-building facilitated dialogues, teaching of Arabic and Hebrew. These are the things that they're doing to try to react. So looking forward to the future, Project Rozana intends to continue to do this work and expand it where possible. And this recent example of the tent clinic in Gaza is a remarkable one. I'm so glad that they've been able to partner with ANERA and hospitals in Israel to provide that treatment. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll go. Just to say that our movement is now all women-led. Our executive director are all women, and we expanded beyond combatants into all members of society, but having an all women-led movement is a wonderful thing. I recommend it. October 7, I gotta say that for me, for the first time, I explicitly felt dehumanized an Israeli here in America, while I never felt dehumanized from my Palestinian friends in Palestine. It was quite a stark difference. October 7 put our movement in a test like the war in 2014. There was a sense, because our friendships are deep and they are forged in bodies on the line, fighting the occupation. We had a good sense, the founders of the movement did, that we can get through this, we just didn't know how to do it. We didn't know how to do it because we didn't know the roles. We as Israelis felt that the earthquake is shattering our very existence on the land, experience we never had, in magnitude we never experienced, that evoked traumas that we were taught as children about the Holocaust. We really felt vulnerable like we never had before. This level, so we had to navigate that with the fact that this level of violence, this level of killing and brutality is something that Palestinians are much more experienced with because they go through it much more often. So, but they also had to take a different role in which they're not used to taking. So it took some time, but we never stopped talking. We trusted that we can figure this out even though we don't know the way, because usually we don't know the way. Usually there is no playbook for joint struggle. There is no a formula. We have to invent it. And we have to navigate through two different, while being fairly radical to both societies. The idea you work together in this way during a violent conflict. So after the one-on-ones, which the confidence that we can get through it, we decided to have uninational conversations. Before we broadened the circles from the core circle, which the conversation was also very difficult, we decided to have a uninational conversations. And those were extremely valuable. Those were the key, because a room with just Israeli Jews and a room just with Palestinians can prepare you before you meet each other. You need to process separately. I thought it was a brilliant move to do. And then we brought a broader movement together where we had to negotiate, translate for each other what the other peoples are going through on their TV, on their social media, living through a whole nother movie, a whole nother reality. So we had to bridge, folks who watch Al Jazeera and CNN and Israeli news would translate to each other what is the experience of the society, make it a little easier to come to the same grounding, still, grounded in our commitment to humanity first, our commitment to each other, and our commitment to our path of peace and nonviolence, no matter what happens. And then we decided to have a meeting of just the Israelis with a Palestinian observer. A Palestinian just observes how Israelis process this moment. Now, a lot of our members said, I'm not sure I can be here, but I don't know where else to be. I don't know, because the entire ecosystem of peace work and joint work was collapsing. Friendships were ruined. People didn't speak to each other, used to be close friends. We were in a complete collapse, but we insisted in saying we had a conversation with Palestinians where an Israeli, where Avner was, present, just to translate to our own, we're a binational community, but to the uninational part of our community, how to process that. That was very, very helpful. And we came out for a ceasefire and a hostage deal and immediate return of the hostages and the release of Palestinian prisoners that were abducted and are still in Israeli jails, many of them tortured and innocent. We came with a strong demand to release all the hostages and to stop the bloodshed, because peace will deliver. And then we started people reaching out to us. We have an office in Bejala, and people needed a space because all the other spaces collapsed. And like, well, you seem to be holding it together. Can we use your facility, have your advice? And we really felt, what we often felt, that even if we are part of a larger ecosystem you see here, and that ecosystem is a consciousness. In that consciousness, whether you belong to it, whether you participate in the organizations themselves, we are a point of reference. We're a point of reference to what together means, together for real, together with the full experience of Palestinian experience as an Israeli. It was a process for me. Transformation is a big part of our work. For me as an Israeli to learn what Palestinian life is about, what Palestinian culture, complexity, history, the Nakba, all that is really, really difficult because they always position this as zero sum. Palestinians have to go through this process too of transformation. So the whole ecosystem goes through this process of information, and like the Phoenix projects, create language and consciousness that we're trying to bring here. And we went on a tour here in America with our activists from Israel and Palestine. And we did some complicated spaces, progressive, super progressive pro-Palestinian spaces, super pro-Israel spaces, and I was expecting the worst. I was expecting a lash out from this or from that, but joint work, real joint work that really recognizes the brutality of the occupation and the fact that Palestinians are going through ethnic cleansing right now, and fully holds Israeli humanity because no one's going anywhere. And we all have to learn and figure out how to thrive together or destroy each other. And I think that's clear now more than ever. We got very little pushback. We came with real joint effort, real humanity. And I was pleasantly surprised. And also from the BDS folks and people who used to give us hard times being normalizers, not that we're not concerned about normalization. We do. Not all dialogue is kosher. Absolutely not. But we were attacked for that. That also went away. I gotta say, there's more room for this, for joint work than I've ever seen before. Something happened. Things are so bad, I guess people are looking for anything they can grasp to. But I found more space, and it's really great. And we have a webinar coming up with our leading activist. We just did an action in the Freedom March in Luja, next to Jericho, and we see great interest from the media to start talking about non-binary. I'm sorry to use that word, but not binary. To start talking about a perspective that is collective liberation. Use that language, not be afraid of it. We either collectively be liberated together from the river to the sea, or we're all going to be destroyed and suffer in enormous ways. Obviously, there's still the imbalance of power. So that's the October 7th, how the movement processes it.
Thank you. I'd love to hear, Mohamed, if you have any response or anything to add on to that from a Palestinian perspective. Did you see any of that sort of breakdown of the ecosystem around the family forum, or how was it to kind of push forward?
Yeah, it's have many different ways, and I don't think we have time to deal with it all. Yeah. But two things, I think there is an article in New York Times about me and my fellow co-manager in the summer camp, Tamar, and it's talk about us and what happened on October 7th. The article took like 3 months or 2 months of phone calls and fact checks, and it's a very good one. It's very intense, very difficult, but it's authentic, and this will give you a glimpse of what we dealt with after October 7th. But mostly after October 7th, we got new members, unfortunately, from both sides. Yeah, I know it's difficult. It's even a joke. So we have also people that lost their family members in the kibbutzim now are speaking in dialogue meetings. And this is, a breakthrough for a person that, is too soon. Yeah, but this gives you a glimpse of what the burial cycle are about, because I think when you lose someone, you lose part of yourself. And as he said, many people saw that there's people are fighting for something that will stop the killing, because everyone is wanting to kill, no one is wanting, to talk even. And in the burial cycle, we emphasize on talking and like a human-to-human interaction and personal breakthrough. So you see the humanity in others, and this is one of our banners, is that it won't stop until we talk. So we keep talking, and we have dialogue meetings. We bring Palestinian and Israeli together to talk in front of audience. So in everywhere, we've been in mosques here, in Islamic centers, we've been in churches, in synagogues. So this is what kind of we are doing, that spread the word that there is people there that they lost their family members, and they lost, one of them lost his both parents in one of the Combatants, and he's now speaking for peace. So he saw that there is people now working, and as he said, if you saw an example, you relate to, they will give you, an idea that there is alternative way. So it's very difficult, but we went through a lot of things. I think the article will help more for you to understand in Israel and Palestine how things are going and how it's difficult and different.
Can you just say again what publication the article was in?
It's in New York Times.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, Mohamed, if that's okay. I know even before October 7th, the Ministry of Education was not happy about your organization coming into schools, right, and talking to youth.
Banned us from school.
Could you talk about that?
And they banned us from entering the school to do the dialogue meetings. The dialogue meetings bring one Palestinian, one Israeli talking about their loss, their personal story. Then the kids will ask a question, and that's it. So they banned us from school. We went to the Supreme Court. We won, but now they are coming back again, and they banned us. They banned the summer camp last year. So every time, and Joint Memorial Day, they banned it. So every time we have this, the government is pushing us and canceling everything we do. Yes, so we have this fought and fights before October 7th, and now it's in a big scale, and every time there's now ongoing killing, so it's more difficult for people, because you need to take a rest from bereavement. You need to take a rest, like not every day. You need 2-3 days to rest. Like engineering, I need 4 or 5 days to calm down and rebound and talk about peace. So when you keep getting the hits, it's difficult to talk about peace. And this is one of the major things that we are doing in the burial cycle, that we keep talking. We keep during the difficult times, and as in the article you will see, we have a staff meeting in October 8th for all the Palestinian Israeli staff, and it was very difficult, but we will not stop talking. Even it's difficult, even it's hard, even sometimes it's impossible, like the summer camp last year and the summer camp this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I make just one comment? I want to thank you for what you said, because I think it was Rula from Standing Together who said, if the extremist voices are the only ones heard and we're not speaking back, they will win, and that's true. And so we have to build out the middle of people who are willing to stand up for peace, and what you all are doing is remarkable in that regard. So I thank you for it very much.
And they're threatened. The authority, the regime is threatened by us coming together. They will prevent, they say they want peace, they don't want peace. They don't want us even to come together. They put courts and the ministries put obstacles about us coming together. And that threatens them more than, I think, anything. Another vision, a vision, and they're so invested in the vision of dividing us and making us enemies and percolating that into the consciousness of the people. So creating an alternative to that is really, really key to allowing people to find that there is an alternative, especially when both societies are extremely traumatized in profound ways.
I was going to say, a lot of political scientists who have been analyzing this conflict have been talking about how peace here is actually the greatest enemy of the leaders from both sides, both of whom really thrive on a regime of chaos to govern. And so I think, one of the things that Women Wage Peace did after October 7th, and some of you may know that one of its more prominent members, Vivian Silver, was of course killed on that day. And within days, of course, activists in Gaza, women there also were killed. And so, this is a movement that was actually losing, the very voices that were needed to get where we want to go. And really what they've had to do is go back to basics, go back to a public campaign on why diplomatic solutions are a better way, right? I mean, really go very basic, almost like conflict resolution 101 for toddlers, because people are so unable to hear and listen to anything other than security, and security means military action, and military action is the only way that they can thrive and be safe. Really what they've had to do is go back to that level of that psychological barriers to working together, to thinking about peace together. And the building bridges is actually harder now, because it's actually harder for women from Palestine and women from Israel to meet, right? There's actual even greater obstacles with checkpoints being closed, with the inability to meet in person. And so a lot of the work that they were doing before in bringing women together has to be rethought as well. So it's a lot of kind of going back to basics and kind of 2 steps backwards and 1 step forward.
Unfortunately, we are about at time, but I was hoping to close us out if each of you could share what's one takeaway, a call to action, a message of hope, a warning, I don't know, but what's, to give each of you a chance for a final word.
I think it's also related to what has been said here, because I am now recalling things, and it's not in the article also, that how it was difficult for us Palestinian, like we supposed to have, we have a Monday meeting for all the stuff, Palestinian Israelis, and the Israelis asked us to do a meeting on Sunday. They didn't want to wait till Monday to have the meeting with us. It's work meeting. And we have WhatsApp group for the Palestinian staff, and they asked, one of them asked why we have meeting like on Sunday, we have it on Monday, and she was scheduling her program. So it was obvious that the Israelis wanted to talk, saw us for the first time, that the people that they want, to talk with, because there's no place to talk in the Israeli society on October 7th and 8th. So we respected that. It was 3 hours, and it was at noon, and not in the morning. So it was also, the Palestinian stuff, how they understand. Now they have also responsibility also to hear the other side, even if they are not agreeing to what they said. And this is one of our key points, that we're not supposed to agree to in the dialogue meetings, in the talks. You're not supposed to agree. We should have listening and active listening. And this is what we train the kids in the summer camp, we train the youth, we train them in the Young Ambassador for Peace, and we train them in the narrative project. So you should listen to the other side, even if it's not, it's hard, even it's difficult. There is now, and you should pick your words, even it's now happening now in Gaza, and all of you know what's happening now in Gaza. And it's now also difficult for the Palestinians and difficult for the Israelis to talk about peace. So we know the sensitivity of the topic. We know that it's very complicated to talk and speak your mind, but I always tell the kids that in the smaller groups, this is your space. Speak your mind, speak what you think. No one will judge you. We will talk about it. We will analyze it as a group. And this is why we made it smaller groups, that it's your space and the free space. And this is why we have a successful summer camp. And if the kids can do it, I think all of the people can do it, because the kids are more pure and more human. And I think what gives me hope are the kids from the summer camp and how they finished the summer camp in the darkest era or darkest years in the history. Thank you.
Definitely. You know, one of my members, Ahmed Khilo, lost 60 members in Gaza, and he's still committed to peace, meaning that it is possible to do. Our focus is fighting now to help Palestinians stay on their lands. There have been multiple villages already ethnically cleansed, forced violence. We're asking you to ask anybody with influence to pressure the Israeli government to stop it, meaning sanction Ben Gvir and Smotrich. It's doable. The administration can do it. They just need a push. So if you have anybody that you are reaching to, your member of Congress or anyone, please pressure them to stop. Gaza and the West Bank are very much connected. The West Bank is being inflamed right now with these mass acts of systemic violent acts with impunity, meaning it's a state violence and has to be repercussions. There are already sanctions in place, but they're by no far enough. They are effective. So we're asking you to pressure the administration and Congress to do more. They have the political space and they have the tools which they are not using for reasons I cannot fully understand. Elections is one thing, but they do have some political space that might benefit the election effort, but they don't choose to do it. So, you know, your role is to pressure anyone you can to stop what's going on in Gaza and the West Bank and put us on the path to hostage deal, immediate hostage deal, and peace. And yeah, that's my call to action. And ceasefire, of course.
Like one more sentence each. Sorry, yeah.
I would add that it would be immensely helpful to amplify these very stories. I think that policymakers here and elsewhere hide behind, these are enemies, there is no one to talk to, that's why we have to send more weapons, or that's why we have to not do this or do that. And so I think amplifying the initiatives that we've been talking about today, where there is collaboration, where there is partnership, could really demystify those excuses.
And I will say that what gives me hope is what I've heard today, that there are people who are willing to take the risks, meet the dangers and the challenges, to bring people together to work for peace, and that it behooves all of us to support those voices and those organizations in that work. So I will. I promise.
Thank you all. I see other people are coming back in from the other groups. So if you've been in this room the whole hour, take your bio break super quickly.